Hello to our lovely audience, and welcome to the first ever episode of The Owl's Nest, Gamepress's very own Fire Emblem Heroes podcast. I am your messenger owl Joshua, but you may know me a bit better as Gamepress's Red Ferrari. Also joining me is my fellow messenger owl Abby, who is a fellow co-analysis at Gamepress, Milky Toast.
Hi there, everyone, and welcome to the show. I hope you have a great time with us this week, and we're looking forward to providing you with the cutting-edge Fire Emblem Heroes content that Gamepress is known for.
Absolutely. Before we begin, though, it's probably a good idea for me to tell you all a little bit about myself. I've been at Gamepress since November 2017, but I've been doing analytical content for Heroes since April of 2017. In fact, you can find all of my analysis work from before I joined Gamepress on my Reddit account. Outside of the podcast, I write and maintain my hero pages on the website, and also I record free-to-play videos for our Grand Hero and Bound Hero battle guides.
Which we're certainly very grateful for. If you haven't checked out Red's video guides, they've come highly recommended. You haven't lived until you see Fjorm clutch out yet another battle with 1 HP left. With that aside, here's my overview about myself. I've been with Gamepress since December 2017, and prior to that, I mostly discussed and did analysis for Heroes with my friends and in some Discord servers. My first project that I ever did for the site, aside from my hero pages, of course, was a massive glossary of Heroes terms, and from there I branched out into coordinating our various Fire Emblem Heroes guides. I write a good amount of them as well, and I also handle my specific unit pages, and now I produce and post-produce this podcast with Joshua, so I suppose I currently wear a lot of different hats.
One more thing before we start, here is a very quick rundown of what you can expect from the Owl's Nest. Each week, we'll be bringing you a recap of the events that have taken place during the past week in Heroes, and that will then be followed by our main topic of discussion. Some weeks, our main discussion will be about the brand new Heroes, and other weeks, we'll be discussing other interesting topics too. We may also have the occasional guest as well, so we hope you'll tune in every Sunday to see what we have in store.
And without any further ado, let's get on with the show.
If you've ever struggled with remembering quest deadlines, knowing when a Grand Hero battle is going to vanish, or have needed a refresher on when you're going to need to start grinding out the Tempest Trials, we've got you covered. This is This Week in Fair, where we'll be bringing you a recap of all the news and events that have happened over the past week in Fire Emblem Heroes. So for us, a week qualifies as from last Sunday up until this Saturday. So if there's anything notable that happens on the day of a new episode's release, it'll be covered first thing in the following week. So with that out of the way, first up, on June 10th, we saw the release of the next new power banner. This banner features the 4 units who have received brand new refinery options in the latest update, these being Lind, Merrick, and young and adult Tiki. Tiki Squared have a new exclusive weapon, Breath of Fog, which is identical in effect to Falchion and can then be further refined to grant bonus attack and defense when close to another dragon, or just a flat stab boost. Both are very powerful red dragons, with adult Tiki being very heavily defense oriented, whereas young Tiki is more balanced across the board. Lind finally makes her return after more than a year since her previous banner. To recap, she's a powerful offensive blue mage with the exclusive tome Aura, which can now be refined to give a large attack boost to adjacent magic and staff allies at the start of turn. It also provides Lind herself with an attack and speed boost when close to a magic or staff ally. If you're looking for a strong blue mage, Lind is a solid option. Finally, Merrick is a green mage with no particular standout stat. His Excalibur tome can now be refined to grant a slaying effect, as well as boost his attack and speed when close to nearby staff and magic users, just like Lind's Aura. All in all, this banner is a strong offering featuring many powerful units. Lind is the standout here due to her long absence from banners entirely, but both Tikis are also very strong, especially with their new weapon. If you wish to pull for these units, don't delay. You'll need to do so before the banner ends on June 23rd.
On June 11th, A new round of tap battles brought us back to the illusory dungeon, this time featuring the legendary heroes. As per usual, you'll have 100 new floors to complete that are full to the brim with toe-tapping Fire Emblem music, and various bosses will block your path every 20 floors. Stage completion rewards include a smattering of crystals, arena medals, and orbs. Quest rewards, meanwhile, grant you 2 new adorable accessories, 10 sacred coins, 10 refining stones, and 3 orbs. Feel the rhythm and get your groove on, because your time with this round of tap battles is once again limited. The illusory dungeon will fade away on July 10th.
On June the 12th, Linus charged onto the stage in a brand new Grand Hero battle. Thankfully, there's no reinforcements to be seen here, but Linus himself is quite a formidable foe, toting the legendary axe, Basilicos, along with powerful skills such as Wrath and Brazen Attack Speed. Take caution if you don't KO him within 1 round of combat, because his special activation will likely put the poor unit on the receiving end in a world of pain. His entourage includes a variety of foes such as a ranged dagger unit and mage, as well as a melee dragon, sword fighter, and lance flyer, so it's advisable to bring a team that can handle a variety of threats. As per usual, the rewards for completing this map on hard mode is a 3-star copy of Linus, on lunatic is a 4-star copy of Linus, and on infernal is an additional 4-star copy of Linus, along with a bonus 2000 feathers. Linus himself is a great offensively focused unit with a legendary weapon and excellent native skills that will make for a great addition to your roster. So tune into our main segment after the news for a more in-depth analysis. If you're having any trouble with beating Linus and his crew, we've posted a guide on his Grand Hero battle page on Gamepress. It even includes a free-to-play clear video. Just make sure that you beat the map by June 18th, because after that, Linus will be vanishing into GHB purgatory.
In preparation for the upcoming Tempest Trials Plus, June 13th saw the release of the Tempest Trials Banner. This banner features Karla, Nino, and Jafar, all of which are bonus units in the Tempest Trials Plus. Karla is an infantry sword fighter with good offenses but low defenses. Although he was previously a very underwhelming unit, Karla is now a strong fighter thanks to the Nameless Blade, a sword exclusive to him and Fur that functions as a 16 might slaying edge. It can also be refined to further grant the Woe Dao effect, allowing Karla to deal massive amounts of damage. Meanwhile, Nino is an offensively focused green mage with high firepower. She comes natively with the Gromblade Tome, one of the most sought after tomes for offensive mages due to the bonus damage it grants when the unit that possesses it is buffed. This makes her one of the most effective accessible mages to build due to not needing to inherit a weapon. Moreover, her stat line grants her the high speed and good attack necessary to fully take advantage of Gromblade. And finally, Jafar is an infantry dagger unit wielding the Deathly Dagger, which functions identically to the Pain Plus staff and can also allow him to completely avoid counterattacks from mages. He can further combo this weapon with skills such as Savage Blow and Poison Strike to deal massive amounts of chip damage. Unfortunately, his ability to actually KO foes is quite poor thanks to his awkward stat distribution. Overall, this is an average banner. Karla and Nino are both strong units, though Nino can be obtained quite easily thanks to being a part of the 3 and 4 star pool. Jafar is a serviceable dagger, but there are better dagger units who are also easier to obtain. If you want to pull from this banner though, make sure to do so before it ends on June 26th.
On June 14th, brand new arena quests were made available. These quests have 3 difficulty levels, each containing 3 quests for 9 quests in total. Each quest completion requirement is to, very simply, win a certain amount of arena duels, with the amount of victories needed to gather rewards increasing with each subsequent difficulty level. In completing all 9 quests, you will earn 12 dueling crests, 3000 universal shards, and 3 orbs. These quests will even reset next week, allowing you to earn a total of 24 dueling crests, 6000 universal shards, and 6 orbs while the quests are available. You have until June 21st to complete the first set of quests, and until June 28th to complete the second set of quests. So make sure to do them when you can to ensure you collect all the rewards.
And finally, on June 16th, the Tempest Trials Plus reopened its doors to the public. This time, the Tempest Trials are themed around the Black Fang from Fire Emblem The Blazing Blade and features Ursula as the final map boss. During this event, you can acquire 2 free copies of Canas, one copy at 4 stars and another copy at 5 stars. Canas comes with the highly sought after Rar Owl tome and some other great skills, though his stat line unfortunately leaves a lot to be desired. We'll be discussing Canas later in the episode, so be sure to stay tuned for that. Additionally, you can also obtain 3 brand new seals: Live to Serve, Earth Dance, and Res Tactic. The usual spectrum of rewards are also available, such as orbs, feathers, sacred coins, and more. Make sure to collect 50,000 points and all the rewards before the Tempest Trials Plus closes on June 26.
And that's everything for this week in Fair. This week has certainly been busy, and I'm sure there's more exciting content soon to come, especially with next week featuring a brand new set of seasonal units. If you're curious about building any of the units we've mentioned, or want to learn more about them, all of their Gamepress unit pages are up to date, so feel free to give them a look. Now, let's continue on with the show.
So let's move on to the main topic of this episode. Last Thursday saw the release of the Scattered Fangs, the latest new heroes banner. With it came 3 new heroes from Fire Emblem The Blazing Blade: Karla, Legault, and a new alternative version of Nino. This banner also brought us Linus and Canas, who we already brought up briefly during this week in Fair. We'll be going through all 5 of these units one by one and giving our thoughts on them. So let's not waste any more time and jump right in.
Indeed. So, the first unit that we're going to be talking today is Karla. Karla is an infantry sword unit, and her stat line is characterized by high offenses but low defenses. And this is a trend you'll notice with the units on the Scattered Fangs banner. Karla's weapon, the Vassal's Blade, allows her to turn her high speed directly into offensive power. And in addition to this, she also comes with one new inheritable skill, Even Speed Wave, which allows her to buff the speed of herself and adjacent allies on even-numbered turns. She has a stat line of 42 HP, 35 attack, 40 speed, 23 defense, and 22 resistance. Now, I'm sure a lot of you will be able to simply look at that stat line and go, that's really a lot like Ira and Mia. And you would absolutely be correct in assuming that. She, in fact, arguably has the strongest offensive stat line of any sword unit. 35 attack and 40 speed is insanely good. As if that wasn't enough, if you are actually lucky enough to get a plus speed Karla, that's even a super boon right there. So not only does she get an increase in speed, but she even gets an extra point, taking her up to 44, which definitely helps with activating her Vassal's Blade. As for the specifics of Vassal Blade, not only is it a slaying edge, but as we said before, when she's got more speed, she actually does more damage. In the case of this, it caps at a bonus of 7 damage, which requires her to outspeed her opponent by 10. Which frankly, with her speed, shouldn't be too hard to do. If you can consistently proc this, that is a bonus 7 damage consistently on each attack, which really makes her an offensive powerhouse. She's definitely up there with the likes of people like Ira and Mia.
Definitely Red. She's quite amazing. She has 65 physical bulk, 64 magical bulk, so almost equal physical and magical bulk, which is pretty rare for a sword unit. Additionally, she comes with Wrath natively, which is again pretty amazing. I believe on Ira's unit page, it's in her recommended set. As we know, Wrath can be a very difficult skill to obtain. So for Karla to have it just natively and not have to invest anything in getting that inherited on her. That's, again, just absolutely incredible. And then on top of that, she has, as we mentioned in her introduction, even speed waves. So at the start of even numbered turns, it actually grants speed +6 to Karla and her adjacent allies for 1 turn. And the bonus is even granted to Karla if no allies are adjacent to her. And as we know, a +6 buff is equal to a class specific buff, which usually you would get 2 stats from a class specific buff, either defense and res or attack and speed. And considering Karla's strongest aspect of her stat line is probably her speed, it definitely synergizes well with her Vassal's Blade, synergizes well with Wrath, gives her additional bulk because if nobody can perform follow-ups on her, then obviously she's going to be surviving a good amount of engagements. And yeah, there's not much to say about Karla except for the fact that she's really, really good.
I do definitely think a lot of her power comes from the Vassal's Blade, which is just honestly one of probably the best legendary swords available in the game. I mean, her insanely high speed, she can very consistently proc this, even against really fast targets. And that's an extra 7 damage on every single attack, which in my opinion, I think if you can consistently proc it, that would be better overall than say the Wodao. Whereas the Wodao gives a +10 when you're special procs, she gets 7 damage consistently, especially if she is outspeeding her opponent, which in turn makes it a really good blade. And besides that, she comes with Wrath anyway. She's getting the Wodao bonus damage effect as long as she's below that threshold.
I wouldn't necessarily use the word consistent because it is dependent on the difference between the speed stat of Karla and the other unit. So if you have Karla versus Karla, you're not necessarily getting that +7 bonus damage, but against most foes, you're probably going to be getting that +7.
There is also the thing you have to consider though, and that is that this is one of the few things in the game which is affected by phantom speed.
Oh yes, very true.
And of course, Phantom Speed gives an effective +10 speed. It doesn't actually give +10 speed, obviously, but it calculates the skills in battle as if she had +10 speed. Now, if she had that, I am quite confident that she could proc it against almost anyone besides maybe another caller running Phantom Speed.
Yeah, absolutely. Unless you're Karla versus Karla, the dual battle there, or maybe a Karla versus plus speed Aira, then definitely with Phantom Speed, with a plus speed Karla, you're getting effectively, for purposes of activation of the Vassal's Blade, 54 speed. That's pretty incredible.
It is really an incredible weapon, and I cannot overstate that enough. What we also have to consider for Karla is she better than her alternatives? Like, we already made the Aira and Mia comparison. Now, when compared to Mia, I would be pretty confident saying that I do think she is better. Maybe not by a massive margin. I still think Mia's a really good unit. She's got a great stat line, and arguably she has the same offensive stat line as Karla. I know Mia has 32 attack, whereas Karla has 35, but Mia's Resolute Blade, of course, gives her attack +3, so she does effectively have 35-40 offenses. Against Aira, though, it's a bit more of a different story, because, of course, Aira has her Aira's Blade, which gives speed +3, and the Flashing Blade effect, but also Aira does have that Regnal Astra, which is, of course, an extremely powerful special attack. When you compare Karla to Aira, I feel it is a lot more of a trade-off. I wouldn't say Aira is better than Karla, nor would I say Karla is better than Aira. I would actually say I think they're on about the same level, which is incredibly commendable given how much we know Aira is a strong unit.
That's also very true. We also, for arena scoring purposes, obviously have to look at SP cost, and Regnal Astra is one of those 500 SP cost specials, meaning that it's going to be weighted more heavily in the arena. So that is definitely something to consider if you're in higher tiers. You want to have high merge levels on these units and stay in tier 20. Then that's something that would be probably important to you, that exclusive special.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it is just the SP cost though. I would definitely say simply because of how powerful Regnal Astra in itself is, especially on someone like Ira with high speed. Could you imagine if Karla had access to it? I believe we've said everything that needs to be said about Karla.
We will move on to the next unit. She's here to do her best once again. Here comes SF Nino, a green tome flyer. Like all of the other Scattered Fangs units, her stat distribution is primarily offensive. Her weapon, Giga Excalibur, is comparable to Karla's, granting the same effect in tome form. She also comes with a new skill, allowing her to move adjacent to any non-flyer unit within 2 spaces. At a neutral stat line, SF Nino has 36 HP, 33 attack, 38 speed, 17 defense, and 25 resistance. To recap, her tome, Giga Excalibur, grants her speed +3. If her speed is over the foe's speed, it boosts the damage she deals by 70% of the difference between stats to a maximum bonus of +7 damage. This also combos well with the Phantom Speed seal.
Absolutely, it's a very good tome in my opinion. It's just a shame that, as with pretty much every offensive mage, it's overshadowed by Blade. Nino does get access to a Blade tome obviously because she is a mage. The bonus damage Giga Excalibur gets compared to what Blade Tome can get. It's unfortunately not really a contest. It's a +7 damage boost from Giga Excalibur if she outspeeds her opponent by 10, versus a +24 damage bonus if she is fully buffed with Blade. Even if you can't give her full buff, even if all you were to give her was a single Hone attack boost, it outpowers Giga Excalibur. Actually, I think it would actually match based on the might difference. That alone shows how easy you can boost Blade's damage. At the end of the day, I would say Blade Tome is definitely a better option than Giga Excalibur. However, I am not going to write off Giga Excalibur at all. It is still, honestly, in my opinion, one of the better offensive tomes. Of course, if you want to use Nino for scoring purposes, then you would want to keep Giga Excalibur on her because it is going to be the highest scoring weapon she can get access to. While we're on the topic of high scoring, I may as well now mention that it is possible to raise up Nino's base stat total bin. As she has a BST of 149, a super boon, while not having a super bane, will bring her up. Now, she has a super boon in both HP and resistance, while she has a super bane in defense, which is quite unfortunate because defense is probably one of her better banes. Having a boon in HP and resistance wouldn't really do much for her, honestly. If you do want to increase her BST bin, the option is there. But honestly, if you're using a mage flyer, or just a mage in general really, you're probably not as bothered about score to begin with.
Yeah, that's really true. Now, something that I think that Giga Excalibur does synergize well with in SF Nino's base kit is her skill Acrobatics, and that allows her, as I mentioned before in her introduction, to move to a space adjacent to any infantry, armored, or cavalry allies who are within 2 spaces of her. So if Nino is in a mixed team and doesn't necessarily want to depend on being buffed by an ally in order to use Blade to better effect, then along with Acrobatics, Giga Excalibur could actually result in quite good performance without the team support that Blade tomes tend to require. I don't think Blade being Nino's most effective set has to do with Giga Excalibur being bad, but rather a matter of Blade being so good.
As you were mentioning with Giga Excalibur combining with aerobatics, I'm guessing that is in with conjunction of your allies also having buff skills like maybe drive skills, or maybe even Nino equipping a bond skill. I bet she could work really well with attack speed bond in combination with aerobatics. But of course that's a pretty expensive investment, especially considering she comes with Swift Sparrow, which I would definitely say is one of the best A-slot skills for any offensive mage.
Yes, exactly. That's a great point. So, for comparables, we actually have regular Nino, which is pretty surprising. Compared to Nino, SF Nino does possess plus 3 HP more than her counterpart, plus 2 speed, minus 2 defense, and minus 1 resistance. Some reasons that you may want to use Nino over SF Nino is that Nino obviously has the Grom Blade by default, meaning that you don't have to inherit it onto her, though for the plus version you would have to feather her to 5 stars, assuming you didn't pull her on a banner on which she is featured, and of course Nino has much greater availability in that she's available at 3 or 4 stars, and is therefore much easier to merge.
Yes, and also much easier to get that ideal IV spread for, especially if you're not a high spender who doesn't roll a lot. Maybe you've only got one copy of SF Nino. You're unfortunately at that point kind of stuck with whatever SF Nino roll you got, unless you of course rolled another. Whereas Nino, given she's been in the 3 to 4 star pool since launch, she's relatively easy to get a decent IV set for. Of course it is always luck. Maybe you've pulled a dozen Nino and every single one has been minus speed or minus attack. I don't know. In that case, I definitely think SF Nino is better than regular Nino when you compare them at the same level, but you do also have to consider that Nino is probably cheaper to build because you don't have to inherit the weapon, but then again, Nino also needs a new A slot like Fury or even Swiss Sparrow herself, and of course she has much greater availability. It's much easier to get her to plus 10 for the average user, and it's easier to get good IVs for. Another comparison I think is worth making is definitely Nino to the rest of the mage flyers, because if you want a mage flyer, every single one right now is 5-star exclusive, so availability isn't really a question there. If we were to compare her to, say, Summer Corrin, who I think would probably be her closest comparison as far as the mage flyers are concerned, even with the colour difference, she has plus 2 HP, plus 2 attack, plus 4 speed, minus 5 defense, and minus 1 resistance. When you compare SF Nino to Summer Corrin, besides the colour difference obviously, Nino has greater offences at the cost of her defences. I would say from an offensive perspective, she is probably the best mage flyer we've gotten so far, which is definitely saying something because we've gotten some really good mage flyers in my opinion, Summer Corrin to name one. I personally think Spring Camilla is also very good, but she is drastically different than Nino. She's more defense focused while Nino is more offense focused, so that's not really the fairest comparison to make, even if they are the same colour.
Right, you definitely won't be running TA Raven on SF Nino like you might with Spring Camilla.
Definitely, yeah.
So with that being said, SF Nino does have 53 physical bulk and 61 magical bulk, but something to also consider is that due to her reasonably high speed, so that's 38 speed with plus 3 to that for a total of 41 if you're using Giga Excalibur, it's reasonably unlikely that a lot of units are going to be performing follow-ups on her unless, of course, they're using a Brave weapon. So that does indirectly, or I guess even directly, contribute to her bulk, because she would in certain circumstances be surviving combat engagements that she wouldn't be surviving otherwise.
Yeah, that can be the case. You also do have to definitely watch out with her being a flyer. She does have the archer weakness. I'm pretty certain given her low defense, her relatively low HP, that a vast majority of the archers in the game could probably one-hit KO her. That is definitely something to watch out for with archers, especially units like WF Hinoka, Brave Lynn, and Halloween Jacob being quite common. You will also have to watch out for that. But besides that, she can survive a decent amount. She can usually take a hit, unless she's against a sword unit like Legendary Ike or something who would just one hit KO her pretty much guaranteed. I haven't even done any calcs on that, and I'm pretty confident Legendary Ike could one hit her.
Even if he couldn't with quick riposte, it would probably be a sure thing, so...
Though then again, if he had to rely on quick riposte, I feel Nino could probably defeat Ike in 2 hits, especially if she was buffed. Probably. Don't quote me on that. Anyway, with that being said, I believe we are done talking about Nino.
Okay, we will move on to the next unit.
And here comes the janitor. Legault is an infantry dagger unit, and like the other heroes on the Scattered Fangs banner, his stats are heavily geared towards offense instead of defense. His new weapon, the Cleaner, increases damage dealt by the total amount of bonuses from Hone and Fortify style skills that the opponent has, kind of like a reverse blade tome. Legault also carries no new skills, but he does natively come with Swift Strike, which was previously locked to a seasonal unit. He has a neutral stat line of 39 HP, 31 attack, 38 speed, 24 defense, and 19 resistance. As you can see, very, very offensive focused. Even with how focused his offenses are, his bulk isn't that terrible. He has 63 physical bulk and 58 magical bulk, so he can certainly take a hit or two, though maybe not more than that. With his weapon, the Cleaner, it's decent, but it unfortunately does have a lot of major issues, namely the reliance on the enemy being boosted in order for it to even do anything. You'll need to find a unit who has received a lot of buffs. When it's the AI you're fighting, probably is not going to happen that much unless you're running against a Horse Emblem team and they're all fully buffed. There's the other thing to note that some skills don't work with it. Like for example, one idea that we had when the Cleaner was first announced is to use it alongside Dull Ranged, because that would then cancel out the opponent's buff if they're ranged, but you would still get the damage bonus from the Cleaner. Unfortunately, it doesn't work like that. If you do have Dull Ranged equipped on Legault, the enemy will not have any buffs, obviously, which results in no extra damage. That is, in itself, where the problem with the Cleaner as a weapon lies.
Exactly, Joshua, exactly. We just want to give a shout out to Reddit user Birdie Song Gwent, who did actually sacrifice a 5-star male Morgan in order to test Dull Ranged on their Legault, and unfortunately, as Red mentioned, it was confirmed that Dull Ranged does not work with the Cleaner, which would have been a really cool combination, but they don't synergize and don't work at all with each other, so that's a shame.
It is unfortunate indeed, because if it did work with Dull Range, that would give a quite niche skill a pretty decent effect overall. Yeah, sure, it wouldn't activate against sword units or axe units, but it would activate if Legault was fighting mages, for example. To that extent, I do not think the Cleaner is Legault's best weapon. I think he would more benefit from having the Barb Shuriken, for example, which is now available in the summoning pool since Kaze has been added to the summoning pool. Alternatively, he could also use the Lethal Carrot to give himself a Wodow effect, a very good option for him. The Cleaner's a decent budget option, but the fact it relies on the foe to be buffed. The fact that the foe being buffed alone will reduce its effectiveness, and the fact that you can't cancel out the buffs and still get the bonuses. It's a kind of awkward weapon to use overall, I feel.
That's very true. And another problem is that if Legault is not able to KO his foe through those buffs, then he's going to be hit with a buffed attack right back. And with 19 base res and 24 base defense, he's probably not going to be surviving a hit, let alone attacking back too. Yet another issue is that with Swift Strike, of course that skill grants +4 speed and res when the unit initiates, it doesn't synergize that well with his stat spread. Of course, he does have 38 speed, so that's good, but he only has 19 base res, as we've mentioned before. So you don't really want Legault to be attacking mages unless he's either running Water Sweep or he can take them out in one strike, the latter of which probably isn't going to happen with 31 base attack. He would much rather have Swiss Sparrow, which would boost his attack and speed by 4 when he initiates combat, but that's a high investment skill that you would potentially have to sacrifice, for example, a Brave Lyn for that, which I don't see why you would necessarily want to get rid of a Brave Lyn in order to help Legault out, unless he's like your favorite character, in which we all know that husbandos come before everything else.
Favorite character before the meta, as I always say. In general, say Legault is not your favorite character and you just want a decent dagger unit, and you want to give a Swift Sparrow to a dagger unit, probably not Legault. But there is alternatives to him, and he does have some very comparable units, namely in another really offensive oriented dagger unit, Soph. when compared to Soph, he has -5 attack, +5 speed, +2 defense, and -2 resistance. He gets more speed and a little bit more physical bulk at the cost of less damage per attack and a bit less magical bulk. So they are quite similar in that regard. Soph, of course, does have his own legendary weapon, the Peshkats, which of course debuffs his target and foes around him, while also buffing himself and allies around him. An awkward weapon to use from time to time, but it can come in handy.
Right, it's definitely better than the cleaner.
I would say so, yes. Even for the just 14 might alone. Another comparable he has though is also Spring Kagero. Compared to Spring Kagero, Legault has -3 HP, -4 attack, +4 speed, +6 defense, and -8 resistance. In that sense, Spring Kagero isn't as fast, but she does hit a lot harder, and she's also quite physically frail, while being a lot better at fighting mages, thanks to her high resistance. But there are a few other things you have to consider. Kagero is seasonal locked. Her spring form is anyway, which means she's a lot harder to get a hold of. But of course, Spring Kagero is also a flying unit, which in itself brings its own benefits such as much better mobility and access to flyer exclusive buffs and skills.
And when it comes to debuff support units or a ranged unit, that extra mobility is really useful in that you don't have to worry about trenches, that cavaliers obviously have to worry about, and you can also fly over any gaps, any forests, so that's really exceptionally useful for this kind of unit archetype.
Overall, Legault is still, even though it sounds like we've been having quite a harsh time on him, he's still a really good unit, I think. Probably one of the better dagger units in my opinion.
For a dagger, he doesn't have a niche like Felicia, who has her exclusive weapon, but if you're into those kinds of debuffer daggers, or you just really like dagger units, I would say that Legault is worth considering. He just requires more investment than some of his contemporaries.
I would never advise holding off if it's your favourite unit, but I am pretty certain Legault is going to be demoted from this banner.
Yes, we'll obviously have to wait and see, but it's pretty likely.
If you maybe want to build him but you're not sure whether to pull for him, maybe it might be better to wait. Of course, unless he is your favourite character ever, then in which case, pull away because you never know what intelligent systems might pull.
After the whole Ares incident, I think we're all kind of on our toes waiting to see who's going to be demoted next.
Pretty much indeed. So I think we are done with Legault, so let's move on to our next unit.
And now we have a Grand Hero Battle unit. Linus is an infantry axe fighter, and his stat line points to him being designed as a melee duelist with high attack, speed, and defense. His weapon, Basilicos, acts as a legendary slaying axe, which can be further refined for either Life and Death 3 or to boost another stat. He comes with no new skills, but does come with brazen attack speed, which was previously only on a seasonal unit. Obviously, as a Grand Hero Battle unit, Linus does not have access to AVs, so his stat line at 5 stars would be 42 HP, 37 attack, 33 speed, 32 defense, and 18 res. His legendary axe, Basilicos, obviously has a slaying effect, which means that it accelerates his special trigger, so he has a permanent -1 cooldown count. When it is refined for its effect, it also still accelerates the special trigger, so he has a cooldown count -1, but additionally grants attack and speed +5, and inflicts defense and res -5. Now, Joshua actually wrote Linus's hero page, so I'm going to allow him to take it away.
Yes, Linus. I think, honestly, as far as free units go, I would argue that Linus is probably one of the best we've gotten. His stat line is frankly really great. 37 attack, 33 speed, and 32 defense is a really solid mix. He's not lacking in any stat. 33 speed can be a bit middling, especially when we've got a lot of fast units, but it is definitely serviceable, and the fact he's got the the effect refine on the Basilicos, that can really help his offensive power, and because of which, I think that makes Linus a very flexible unit. He can run these offensive setup. He can get the effect refine on his Basilicos, and then he can run an A slot such as his native Braves and attack speed. He can run Fury. He can run Life and Death. He has a ton of options, and then he can run a B slot such as Desperation or Wrath, and he makes for a solid offensive unit. But then he can also run very well in a defensive setup. Thanks to his 32 defense, you can give him, instead of the effect refine, you could give him the defense refine on Basilicos for an extra 4 defense and 5 HP. And even then you can give him skills such as Steady Breath and Aether, since Basilicos will reduce his Aether cooldown to just a charge of 4. When he's attacked, Steady Breath will let him reduce his special cooldown by 2 instead of 1. He can easily proc Aether almost every single round of combat if he does have Steady Breath. Of course, that's very expensive. You could give him an alternative such as Steady Stance, Close Defense, or even Fury, and then give him a B slot such as Quick Riposte, Guard, even maybe Renewal, and you can have him run really well in a defensive setup. Of course, you'd maybe not want to use Aether if you don't have Steady Breath, but you could run something such as, say, Sol as a different option. Sol would only have a cooldown of 2, which means after he's attacked once, he will have Sol ready to go immediately and heal himself back up, which I'm sure you'll agree is not a bad deal at all.
I know exactly what you mean. Healing sets that don't use ether can be seen as a little bit gimmicky, especially because most of us haven't used them, but it definitely seems like something fun to try, because I know I haven't used a healing set like that before.
Yeah, I find healing sets personally to be, they're quite good, not just in arena, but in modes where you need to be sustainable, like Tempest Trials. And I would just like to correct myself here. I said Sol would activate on Linus's first attack if he gets attacked. That's only if he has Steady Breath, which in itself is why I think Sol is a good alternative to Aether on a defensive set, because if you are not running Steady Breath, he can be attacked, then attack himself, and he's got Sol ready for his second attack, which is what I meant at that point. Even then, I think it is still a solid option. I actually run a Loverbound Hector with Noontime because I originally gave him that for the Tempest Trials that he was a bonus unit for, and I've just never taken it off him, and I love using that even in Arena. I definitely think healing sets are quite underrated, even without Aether, because normally if you want a healing set, a lot of people would say run Aether, but I think Sol and Noontime can be used quite effectively in the right setup.
Excellent, excellent. That's maybe something that we'll talk about in a later episode. So for comparable weapons, we have the legendary axe Hodeclaire, which accelerates the special trigger, but also with the plus effect refine, still accelerates the special trigger, but then also deals plus 10 damage when the special triggers. So how would you say that Basilicos compares to Hodeclaire?
Well, I mean, there's the thing to consider that they are on different units, obviously. Hauteclaire, however you pronounce it, that's exclusive to Minerva and Michaelis, whereas Basilicos is exclusive to Raven and Linus. Between the two, though, I would say it's what do you want more? Do you want the Wodow effect more, or do you want Life and Death more? Because both of them can get the generic stat refines, so it's not worth comparing them. And without a refine, they're the same weapon, so that's also not worth comparing. On Linus specifically, I think, personally, just because I'm not the biggest fan of Life and Death, I think I would personally take the Hauteclaire, because that extra 10 damage could help him out a lot, I think. Not to say that Basilicos is bad with its Life and Death refine, because it certainly is not. In fact, I believe on his page, 2 of the 3 builds I recommended did actually recommend the effective refine, because it's just so useful for offensive potential.
Yep, definitely makes sense. Of course, the comparable that we absolutely have to talk about is, as you mentioned, the only other unit who currently has access to Basilicos, which is Raven. So compared to Raven, Linus has +1 HP, +3 attack, -2 speed, +7 defense, and -4 res, and this is of course assuming a neutral Raven. Now, Raven has access to IVs and is also mergeable to +10, but how would you say they measure up to each other if you're like, there's definitely one unit with Basilicos I have to use? Which one would you recommend?
That's quite difficult to answer because I think that they excel more at different things. Linus can run both offensive and defensive sets. A defensive set is definitely something I think is more unique to Linus than Raven, even though Raven could run Steady Breath if he wanted to. But I think Raven is definitely more suited to the offensive sets thanks to his higher speed of 35. With Raven, I think it'd be better to run like an offensive set with Wrath or Fury, or even a Gale Force set, which I think he can run quite well, where he has Heavy Blade in a seal slot, which is something else I think Linus can run really well. I think it comes down to more what sort of role do you want them to have, and does the fact that Linus cannot be having IVs or really merged much affect you? Because obviously if you want a +10 axe unit, you would go for Raven, because Linus just cannot get there. Let's say you were just keeping them as normal, say they were unmerged. I would say Linus is probably, to me personally, a better unit because of that extra defense, giving him a lot more flexibility, even without the IV access. The IV access is definitely a huge thing. If Linus had access to IVs, I would flat out say I think he's better than Raven. But since Raven does have that access to IVs, and since he is mergeable, it more depends on what the person wants. If they don't care about merging and they want a more defensive axe unit, go for Linus. If they want to merge or they want a more offensive axe unit, then go for Raven. But that is what I would personally recommend.
Also, it kind of depends on whose art you want to be looking at whenever.
Oh yes, I made a point about that on his page, do not worry. There's some fine art.
God tier art on Linus. So, are there any other comparables that you potentially like to add?
My one other comparable is Brave Ike. I feel when you consider them defensively, they serve a quite similar role. Brave Ike, when compared to Linus, Linus has -1 HP, +1 attack, +5 speed, -3 defense, and -2 resistance. So Linus has a bit more offensive power, but a bit less bulk. You also gotta consider that Brave Ike comes naturally with Steady Breath. He also comes naturally with Aether. He has that exclusive skill Bjork's Blessing, which lets him ignore buffs on cavalry units, and I think also flyer units. I can't entirely remember right now. But more importantly than that, I would say, is he has that axe, the Irvin, which not only is also a slaying axe, it has the deflect effect from consecutive attacks after the first attack against him. The damage is reduced by 80%, which just makes Brave Ike incredibly durable. Not to mention, of course, just like Raven, he gets access to IVs and he's also mergeable. Between the two, I mean, Brave Ike, of course, is a 5-star exclusive unit, which can offset some people when compared to Linus. But I would say Brave Ike is probably a better unit because he's got that bit of extra bulk. He comes with Steady Breath and Aether by default. He's got that access to IVs and the mergeability, and he's got the Irvin. I think the Irvin does really do a lot to help with Brave Ike's tankiness. So between the two, I would say Brave Ike is better, but Linus is a solid contender.
All right, good. Anything else to say, or shall we move on to the next unit?
I think we shall move on. Coming to us as a Tempest Trials reward, Canas is an infantry red tome mage. He natively comes with the highly sought after Raw Owl tome, which most will likely immediately fodder to their Winter Forger, of course assuming you have her. He also comes with Res Tactic at 4 stars, making him even more useful for fodder than he would be otherwise. For his stat line, he has 36 hit points, 32 attack, 29 speed, 21 defense, and 33 resistance. resistance. Of course, with him being obtainable only from the Tempest Trials, he doesn't have any access to any sort of random IVs. And for a quick recap, his tome, the Raw Owl, will boost his attack, speed, defense, and resistance by the number of adjacent allies times 2, for a maximum buff of 6 to each stat, assuming he's adjacent to all 3 of his allies. Now, it just so happens that Abby was the author for Canas' page. I'm going to hand the floor over to her, and she will tell you all about Canas.
Well, I certainly feel bad for anyone who has Canas as their favorite Fire Emblem character, and we're really anticipating his release because although he does have his niche uses, unfortunately he's a bit underwhelming. He has 57 physical bulk and 69 magical bulk, but the elephant in the room is definitely his comparables, and he is most comparable to everyone's favorite red mage, Ray, who Canas has -1 defense and +4 res over. That's the only difference. Obviously, Canas does not have access to IVs and is also not highly mergeable like Ray is, so Ray at +10 would evidently be receiving a significant stat boost that Canas just cannot currently have. Another comparable would also be Summer Leo, who Canas has -1 HP, +2 speed, +5 defense, and -2 res when compared to, which is also kind of unfortunate for him because really the only thing Canas can do really well is res tank, at least in my opinion. And as far as that goes, he's pretty good. Under the right circumstances, he can survive Reinhardt. Obviously not in all circumstances, but in certain circumstances. His res is also considerably boosted by his Raw Owl tome when adjacent to allies, especially if he goes for a +res refinement and skills which further boost his res like attack respawn and distant defense. Quick riposte does kind of help patch up his middling speed, and then he obviously has enough res to run ploys like attack ploy for survivability or speed ploy for team support. Obviously he can use ploy seals, although you'd probably want to use distant defense instead, and he'll also be dealing significant damage with Iceberg once it procs, or even more damage with Glacies, but unfortunately, as I said, Canas is kind of a weak unit, especially because Ray is his closest competition, and it's kind of sad because Canas' art is really nice, and I guess he's good enough to use in modes like Arena Assault if you build him cheaply with skills like Fury or even his native HP res +2.
I would agree with what you said. It is rather unfortunate that intelligent systems have shown that they don't really like differentiating the red mages, especially the free ones. First there was Lion, who was very comparable to Sophia, which did really personally disappoint me because I'm such a huge fan of Sacred Stones, and Lion is one of my favourite characters. And now they've done the same thing with Canas and made him effectively Ray, which does really annoy me. We have gotten some good, unique red mages, such as Arvis and Julius, but they're quite few and far in between, and it is really unfortunate, especially because I know there were a lot of people excited for Canas' introduction. I am just sad and disappointed that they did go this way with him. But he's not bad. He's usable. I'm certainly going to be using him because he's a free 5-star mage that I can use in free-to-play videos, so there's that, I guess.
I consider it better than not being able to say that he has any redeeming qualities, and his res is pretty good, which is worth mentioning as well. Just he's not irredeemable, which is hopefully enough for Canas fans. I really apologize to you guys. I feel very bad for you.
I do too, and I can say I will probably be keeping his 5-star copy definitely. Just to have a 5-star mage that I can use in my free-to-play videos is excellent. Hopefully they'll bring out one who's pretty good in the future. I mean, Canas is usable, but he's not great. And I think that's all we can really say about him. He's meh.
That's right on the nose. Meh is the perfect way to describe him. So with that being said, we will be moving on.
And with that done, that is every single unit who came with the Scattered Fangs Banner. All in all, I think that this is a very solid banner. All of the banner units available, especially Karla, is really great. I think they are worth pulling for. In the case of the 3 units, I think Linus is really solid. Canas is a bit meh. But I think it's been a really good new banner and some great new additions to the roster.
Yeah, I completely agree. Karla is definitely the standout, but Nino and to a lesser degree Legault are also good in their own rights. I personally tend to avoid colorless because everyone knows what happens when you pull colorless. You get pity broken by a healer, and then you cry very salty tears. But with that being said, if you don't have a 5-star dagger unit and you would like to potentially invest in one, and you're not really into Felicia or Soth's whole thing, then Legault may be for you. And Nino, as a flying mage, she's a flying mage. If you don't have one, they're very fun to use. I use a few myself, and definitely again worth pulling for on this banner. And as we said, Karla is Karla. Karla is just absolutely incredible. So if you need a sword unit who will probably just KO everything in her path, definitely a good choice.
So that will be it for our main section for this week. If you guys want to learn more about any of the units we've talked about today, then we have pages up on Gamepress about every single unit we have talked about, detailing strengths, weaknesses, team options, counters, and of course build options for that character. So that's it for this week on The Owl's Nest. Thanks to everyone who listened in and stayed with us until the end. We hope you had a great time hanging out with us.
But before we go, we'd like to give credit to Kevin MacLeod of Incompetech fame for creating all the music you've heard in this podcast today. You can find a link to his website in the podcast description.
Tune in every Sunday for more cutting-edge Fire Emblem Heroes news and in-depth analysis. Until then, we wish you good luck in your summoning and see you next week.